Millionaire's pregnant wife sees him hugging Mistress outside a hotel. She leaves in regret. They were once the picture of marital bliss. Alexander Barnes, a magnetic millionaire known for his ruthless business acumen, and his radiant wife, Veronica, expecting their first child. Their love story shone like a fairy tale until a single encounter outside a gleaming hotel shattered everything. On a crisp autumn evening, Veronica caught a glimpse of her husband in the arms of another woman, intimate, unguarded, undeniably real. In that devastating moment, Veronica felt their bond splinter. Little did either of them know that this heartbreak would spark a chain of events, forcing them to face secrets, betrayals, and regrets beyond imagination. Veronica Barnes had never considered herself a jealous wife. She prided herself on being self-assured, a trait she had cultivated over years of juggling high-stakes negotiation with philanthropic events in Chicago's elite circles. At 30, with her dark hair and serene gaze, she radiated both intelligence and confidence, a perfect match for her husband, Alexander Barnes, whose reputation in real estate investments preceded him. They had married 2 years prior at a lavish ceremony along Lake Michigan, quickly becoming the subject of tabloids that gleefully celebrated the union of a handsome millionaire and a kind-hearted, graceful woman from a well-to-do family. Yet as her pregnancy progressed, Veronica found herself ill at ease. The initial joy of expecting a child was overshadowed by a persistent sense of anxiety, subtle but gnawing at her. She couldn't pinpoint when the first flicker of doubt ignited in her mind. Alexander had always been attentive and gentle, offering her foot massages after long days and reading up on baby care. But over the past few months, he'd been staying out late more frequently, and the glow in his eyes had gradually been replaced by a somber shadow. Veronica tried telling herself that all men felt the weight of fatherhood and that Alexander's increased workload was his way of preparing for their baby's financial security. Still, the hush in the house spoke volumes. Their once lively dinners had turned quiet. Even their private jokes, humorous jabs at Alexander's business partner, Harris Kim, or the comedic remarks about the outlandish socialites at charity galas felt stale. Meanwhile, Veronica's belly was expanding, a constant reminder that time was pressing forward and that their child's arrival edged closer by the day. It was one evening in particular that magnified her uncertainties. Alexander claimed he had an emergency business meeting that would stretch late into the night. Sitting alone in their penthouse, overlooking Chicago's shimmering skyline, Veronica's mind churned with scenarios. She attempted to distract herself by calling her friend, Sofia Delgado. Sofia listened carefully as Veronica's voice trembled, something entirely out of character for the usually poised woman. Sofia tried to reassure her, saying, "You know Alexander is devoted to you, Ronnie. He's probably drowning in paperwork. Don't let the tabloids or your hormones feed your paranoia." Still, Veronica couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. She recalled hearing gossip at a benefit about a woman named Mia Donovan, a sophisticated interior designer from New York, rumored to have been seen with Alexander during a conference in Manhattan. Veronica had laughed it off at first. Rumors were a dime a dozen in their circles. But that night, as she stared out the window, counting the headlights below, she felt the loneliness for the first time in her marriage, and it settled inside her like a cold weight. For now, she kept her growing suspicions to herself, determined to protect her marriage and her unborn child from the hounding curiosity of society. But in her heart, questions had begun to stir. Little did she know, the answers would soon crash into her life in the most devastating way. 2 weeks later, Veronica was invited to a high-profile charity gala at the historic Waldorf Hotel in downtown Chicago. Typically, Alexander would be the one dragging her there in a sleek black limousine, for these events offered him prime networking opportunities. That night, however, he had a prior engagement in New York, to finalize a multi-million-dollar property acquisition. He insisted she go without him, stressing the significance of her presence as a philanthropic face for the family. After all, Alexander Barnes was about to become a father, and public image mattered in his world. Veronica arrived at the Waldorf Hotel dressed in an elegant navy blue gown that draped around her growing belly. She smiled graciously at photographers who continued to shower her with compliments. The glitz and glamour, the star-studded guests, people like Julia Anderson from Boston's philanthropic circles, and Benjamin Fowler, a Chicago-based tech mogul, formed a dazzling swirl of conversation and champagne. Despite the bright lights, Veronica felt a pang of loneliness. She missed Alexander's steady hand around her waist, guiding her through the crowd. Her mind was too preoccupied to settle into friendly chatter. She made polite small talk with the hostess, Patricia Harrington, who was raising money for a children's cancer research center. Veronica greeted acquaintances, took part in the silent auction, and thanked donors. She was exhausted, mentally and physically, from wearing a brilliant smile that masked her churning inner world. Just as she was about to slip away quietly, a figure in a dark suit at the far end of the ballroom caught her eye. He looked all too familiar, tall, broad shoulders, the confident posture she recognized as belonging to her husband. Shock coursed through her like an electric jolt. Alexander was supposed to be in New York. What was he doing here? She watched him from a distance, unsure if she should approach him immediately or wait for him to notice her. Was he there to surprise her? A trickle of hope warmed her chest. Maybe he was planning a grand romantic gesture. She began maneuvering through the crowd, weaving past socialites and business moguls. But just as she was about to call his name, she saw him turn and extend his arms around a woman with wavy auburn hair. Her back was turned, so Veronica couldn't see her face. The hug was more than cordial. It was close, intimate, as though they were sharing a private, treasured moment. Veronica froze in her tracks. Her heart thumped violently. Time slowed, the clinking of wine glasses and the murmur of voices fading into a dull roar in her ears. She stepped back, seeking refuge behind a marble column to observe. The woman turned slightly, revealing her profile, a beautiful, sophisticated face. In that instant, Veronica recognized her, Mia Donovan, the interior designer from New York, the subject of swirling rumors. As if pulled by a silent force, Veronica followed them, staying just far enough behind so she wouldn't be noticed. She watched as Alexander guided Mia out of the ballroom and into a small corridor leading to the hotel's rear exit. Disbelief burned into fury, heartbreak clashing with confusion. All the whispered speculation, the gossip. It was real, clutching the diamond necklace Alexander had gifted her on their first anniversary. Veronica tried to steady her breathing. She felt faint, her stomach knotting. But she needed to see, needed confirmation, even if it shattered her world. In the dimly lit corridor of the Waldorf Hotel, Alexander's silhouette briefly merged with Mia's as they paused near a secluded side entrance. Veronica, hidden behind a tall potted fern, leaned forward just enough to witness the most damning sight. Alexander cupped Mia's face gently, smiled into her eyes, and pulled her into an affectionate embrace. It wasn't a polite, social hug. It was the kind of hug that Veronica had once believed belonged to her alone, the silent promise of intimacy and love. Veronica's blood turned cold. For a moment, she thought she might faint. Her head spun with the memory of their wedding vows, the day they stood before loved ones, pledging their faithfulness. She thought of all the times Alexander had kissed her forehead reassuringly whenever doubt clouded her mind. Now, in one crushing moment, she saw his betrayal laid bare. She wanted to storm out, to confront them right there and then. Yet a sliver of self-preservation told her that more people could be watching, photographers possibly waiting around every corner. The last thing she needed was to become fodder for tabloids. She bit her lip so hard she tasted blood, forcing her feet to remain silent on the checkered tile as she continued to watch. Before she could even decide on her next move, Alexander and Mia turned to walk away. Not wanting to lose sight of them, Veronica trailed a few steps behind. They exited through the side door, stepping out into the crisp autumn air, with just the streetlights to illuminate their figures. Veronica pressed her body against the cool metal frame of the door, her breaths shallow as she peered out. "Shall I call you a car?" Alexander asked in a gentle tone. Mia laughed softly. "I can handle myself, darling. I came with a driver, but I do appreciate the concern. Darling." The words sliced through Veronica's heart like a blade. Seeing them this way, it was no misunderstanding. There was no plausible explanation that could excuse such closeness. If he was comforting a colleague, it wouldn't be so tender, so loving. And he had lied about being in New York. Mia placed a hand on Alexander's shoulder, her eyes drifting over his face. "I'll see you soon," she said, turning to walk toward a sleek black sedan. Alexander watched her go. His face softened in longing an expression Veronica had believed was reserved only for her. In that moment, Veronica realized she had her proof. She didn't need to wait around for more. Her marriage, built on trust and partnership, was in grave peril. And in the swirling mess of heartbreak and anger, another emotion took hold, protectiveness for her unborn child. How could she raise a baby in such deceit? Trembling, Veronica turned away, nearly stumbling in her heels. The doorman politely tipped his hat as she rushed through the lobby, ignoring the curious glances from guests. Her eyes brimmed with tears, though she refused to let them fall. She fumbled for her phone, breath hitching, and dialed the number of her private driver. "Please pick me up now," she managed to say, voice cracking. "I'll be on the curb." There was no going back after what she'd seen. Unbeknownst to Alexander, everything in their world had just changed forever. The following morning, Veronica awoke in their penthouse's master bedroom. The sky outside tinted a pastel orange as the sun crept over the Chicago skyline. She hadn't heard Alexander come home, which meant he might still be out or possibly in the guest room to avoid confronting her. Either way, she felt a pang of nausea unrelated to her pregnancy. Each time her mind replayed last night's scene, her stomach lurched and her heart pounded with fresh betrayal. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, the memory of Alexander and Mia's embrace searing her senses. For months, she had suspected something was off, but to witness it firsthand was an agony she never anticipated. Before heartbreak could paralyze her, anger and self-preservation propelled her into action. She walked to her closet, gathered a few essentials, a week's worth of clothes, her favorite flat shoes, a photo of her parents, and her prenatal vitamins. Methodically, she zipped them up in a small suitcase. Her movements were mechanical, each step taken on pure instinct. Just as she set the suitcase on the bed, her phone buzzed. It was Sophia. "Ronnie, are you okay?" came Sophia's urgent whisper. "I saw you leave the gala in a hurry." "Is everything all right?" Veronica paused, tears threatening to break free. She forced them back, determined to maintain composure. "No, it's not. Sophia, I saw Alexander with someone else." There was a stunned silence on the other end. Then Sophia's voice, subdued and worried. "Oh, Ronnie, I'm so sorry. Do you want me to come over?" "Yes, please. I'm leaving this place." Within an hour, Sophia arrived. Veronica clutched her friend as though she were a lifeline in a raging sea. Softly, Sophia asked if she was absolutely certain about leaving. Veronica nodded, her resolve unshaken. She couldn't stay under the same roof with Alexander while her mind reeled with last night's images. More than anything, she needed space to think, to breathe, and to protect her unborn child from the storm swirling in her heart. Sophia helped her call a taxi, insisting that Veronica stay at her apartment until she figured out her next move. While waiting by the foyer, Veronica spotted a recent photo of herself, and Alexander displayed on a marble side table a promotional shot taken at a new hospital wing they had funded. In the picture, they appeared the epitome of a happy, expectant couple. Gently, she turned the frame face down. She no longer wanted to see what felt like a cruel facade. As they descended in the private elevator, Veronica's mind churned with conflicting thoughts. Part of her wanted to confront Alexander, to demand answers. But another part was too raw with pain to stomach his excuses or half-truths. She had discovered the betrayal herself with her own eyes, and that evidence was damning enough. Stepping out onto the bustling Chicago street, Veronica felt a momentary pang of guilt. Was she overreacting? But then the memory slammed her again. The intimate hug, the longing stare, the word darling floating in the air. If anything, she wasn't reacting strongly enough, she told herself. With Sophia at her side, she slid into the taxi and softly pressed her hand against her stomach. Her baby. That was all that mattered now. And if Alexander's love belonged elsewhere, she had no choice but to shield her child from the fallout. Alexander Barnes returned home at sunrise, exhausted from a night of both excitement and worry. Business deals had gone well. He had met with key investors after the gala, smoothing out the final details of a real estate project. Yet a disquiet had settled over him. Maybe it was the guilt gnawing at him for deceiving Veronica, or perhaps the stark realization that sneaking around with Mia would only complicate his life further. Striding into the penthouse, he noticed the unusual quiet. Typically, Veronica would be up by now, sipping herbal tea and reading the morning headlines. He placed his keys on the kitchen counter, scanning the rooms. No sign of her. He ventured into the bedroom. Empty, the bed looked undisturbed. A jolt of alarm shot through him as he noticed the open closet doors. Veronica's favorite dresses and shoes were missing. Panic spread from his chest to his fingertips. What had happened? He searched the penthouse, calling her name. Nothing. Then he found the framed photo on the marble side table turned face down. His heart hammered. It was a small but telling sign that Veronica had left deliberately, and she was hurt. He dialed her number, but each call went straight to voicemail. Fear seized him as he remembered the last time he had lied to her about a work trip. A cold sweat broke out on his brow, recollecting how Veronica had been suspicious. Had she discovered the truth? Had she seen him with Mia? With shaky hands, he pressed speed dial for another number. His personal assistant, Emily Hargreaves. Emily, he said tersely, where's Miss S. Barnes? Emily's voice trembled. Sir, I'm not sure. She cancelled her morning appointments. I assumed she wasn't feeling well. Alexander ended the call abruptly. Next, he tried calling Sofia Delgado, one of Veronica's closest friends, but the call rang out. Summoning the driver, Martin Rhodes, gave him the same result. Miss S. Barnes had left with a small suitcase, refusing any official car from the Barnes fleet. Alexander felt desperation tighten around his chest like a vise. That morning, every business concern took a back seat. Alexander began to realize the depth of his mistake. Yes, Mia Donovan was beautiful, and there had been an undeniable spark of fascination. They met at a networking event, just drinks at first, then dinners discussing potential interior design for his upcoming hotels. It had started innocently, but illusions quickly blurred into something more physical, a forbidden thrill that lured him each time. He had foolishly convinced himself he could keep it hidden from Veronica. Now the potential cost was staggering, losing his wife, risking the well-being of his unborn child. Alexander sank onto the living room sofa, pressing a hand to his temple. Memories of Veronica flooded his mind, the day they first met at a charity drive where she'd volunteered, the nights they spent sipping wine, dreaming about their future. How had he gotten so lost? Swallowing the lump in his throat, Alexander resolved to find Veronica. He needed to beg her forgiveness, to explain, though he wasn't entirely sure what he could say to justify his transgressions. Suddenly, he pictured their child, the one who wasn't even born yet, and a pang of regret shook him. He should have realized fatherhood was more than finances and stability. It was loyalty, devotion, protection, yet he'd failed on all counts. Driven by fear and guilt, Alexander headed to the elevator, determined to do whatever it took to bring Veronica back home. Veronica huddled on Sofia Delgado's couch, sipping ginger tea to calm the queasiness growing inside her. Sofia's living room was cozy, its walls adorned with photographs of her travels, everything from Machu Picchu to the streets of Florence. The warmth and clutter of real life offered a stark contrast to the cold luxury of the penthouse. Veronica left behind. She felt safe here, away from the accusing silence and hidden shadows. Sofia returned from the kitchen, her expression etched with concern. She placed a comforting hand on Veronica's shoulder. "Ronnie, you need to see a doctor, just to make sure all this stress isn't harming the baby," she murmured gently. Veronica nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "Yes, I'll schedule an appointment. She pressed a hand to her temples, voice faltering. "I still can't believe this. He's been lying to me for months, hasn't he? And I was too blind to see it." Sofia bit her lip, pondering her next words carefully. "I can't speak for how long it's been going on, but this Mia Donovan, I've heard her name mentioned in circles before. She's known for these, let's say, liaisons with wealthy men. It's possible that Alexander fell into her trap, but that doesn't excuse his behavior," Veronica said softly, a flicker of anger rekindling in her eyes. "He betrayed me, betrayed us." They were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. Sofia stood, peered through the peephole, and glanced back at Veronica, eyes wide. "It's Alexander," she whispered. Veronica's heart pounded. She wasn't ready to face him yet. Her instinct was to bolt to the bedroom, but her trembling legs wouldn't comply. Sofia opened the door a crack. "Mr. Barnes?" she said, her tone guarded. Alexander's voice, though muffled, reached Veronica's ears. "Sofia, I just want to speak to my wife, please. I know she's here. I need to see her." Sofia turned to Veronica, who mustered what little composure she had. Slowly, she nodded. Sofia let Alexander in, but not without pinning him with a withering glare. Alexander stepped inside the modest apartment, his expensive suit and polished shoes looking out of place. His normally confident posture was replaced by guilt and uncertainty. He spotted Veronica curled up on the couch, her eyes swollen from crying. The sight shattered him. He moved closer, hands trembling at his sides. "Veronica," he started, voice tight with emotion. She raised her gaze to meet his, her expression a mix of betrayal and sorrow. "How could you do this?" Alexander exhaled shakily. I don't have an excuse. It was a mistake, a terrible one. I swear, it didn't mean anything. I was an idiot. Please, let me fix this." Veronica scoffed softly, tears brimming again. "It didn't mean anything. You lied to me. You're still lying." Sofia hovered in the background, ready to intervene if necessary. Alexander glanced at her, then back at Veronica. "I never wanted this. I love you, Veronica. I love our baby. And yet you were with her last night," Veronica replied, voice trembling, "a few hours after telling me you had an urgent flight to New York." He sank to his knees beside her, gently placing a hand over hers. His eyes were glassy with regret. "I'll end it. I promise you. It's over. I just need a chance to prove it." Veronica's breath caught. Part of her yearned to believe him. After all, she had built her life with this man. But another part screamed at her not to be a fool again. She remained silent, tears spilling freely now. Sophia cleared her throat, looking between them. Alexander, I think it's best if you give Veronica some space. She's upset, and the stress isn't good for her or the baby. He nodded, hesitating before rising to his feet. I understand. I'm sorry, he whispered to Veronica. But I'm not giving up. I'll prove to you that our marriage is worth saving. Veronica watched him go, her head spinning. The moment the door clicked shut, the sob she'd been holding back tore out of her, and for a second she allowed herself to wonder if there truly was a chance to salvage what was left of their broken vows. Over the next few days, Veronica sought refuge in quiet reflection. She didn't respond to Alexander's calls or texts, despite them coming in steady waves. Instead, she scheduled a check-up with her obstetrician, Dr. Rebecca Lynn, at Lakeshore Medical. She arrived at the clinic early, wanting to avoid the paparazzi, who sometimes lingered around her usual haunts in hopes of capturing some exclusive drama related to the Barnes name. During the ultrasound, as she listened to the steady whoosh of her baby's heartbeat, tears welled up in her eyes. This tiny life deserved stability, deserved a father who would stand firm and unwavering. Could Alexander still be that father? When Dr. Lynn announced everything looked healthy, relief washed over her, but the emotional turmoil persisted. She spent the remainder of the day strolling through the city with Sophia, who listened intently as Veronica poured her heart out, her hopes, her doubts, her anger. Remember the time we were in college, and you swore you'd never let a man define your worth? Sophia prompted gently. You're stronger than you think, Veronica. Veronica nodded, rubbing her baby bump absently. But he's the father of my child, Soph. It's not so simple to just walk away. That evening, while Veronica was curled under a blanket in Sophia's living room, an unexpected visitor arrived. Sophia ushered in a middle-aged woman with kind grey eyes and elegantly tied-back hair. Veronica, Sophia said softly, this is Elizabeth Harrington. She's an attorney, a very discreet one. Elizabeth offered a polite smile. Miss S. Barnes, your friend Sophia asked me to come by. She believes you might be in need of some legal guidance. Caught off guard, Veronica stared at Sophia, who gave her a gentle nod. I just wanted you to have options, Sophia explained. In case you decide to separate or, well, whatever path you choose, you should be informed. Veronica's heart pounded. Divorce? She whispered, testing the word in her mouth. She had never thought she would utter it, not in her wildest nightmares. Elizabeth Harrington settled into a chair opposite Veronica. I'm aware this is a delicate situation, and I'm not here to push you in any direction. But if you wish to explore legal avenues like filing for separation, negotiating custody, or even prenuptial implications, I'm here to help. Emotions surged within Veronica, fear, betrayal, anger, and beneath it all, a flickering love she couldn't quite extinguish. Yes, she was hurt beyond measure, but the marriage had been real, at least to her. Did she truly want it to end in a courtroom battle? She thanked Elizabeth and promised she would think about it. After the attorney left, Veronica felt physically and emotionally drained. Unable to sleep, she wandered to the bookshelf, pulling out an old photo album she had tucked away at Sophia's place years ago. Inside were pictures of her younger self, grinning at college events, making silly faces with Sophia. And then she came across the earliest pictures she had with Alexander, back when they first started dating. One snapshot caught her eye. They were at a park, drenched in the golden light of sunset, Alexander holding her close as she laughed at something he whispered. She remembered feeling so loved, so cherished at that moment. She closed the album gently, tears silently rolling down her cheeks. Could they ever return to that time, or was it gone forever? Meanwhile, Alexander found himself drowning in a tempest of guilt and panic. He cancelled his meetings and delegated urgent tasks to his business partner, Harris Kim. His staff barely recognized him in this state, disheveled, pacing, short-tempered, yet strangely subdued all at once. He hardly slept, replaying the night at the Waldorf Hotel in his mind repeatedly. Each replay ended with the same dread, Veronica discovering him in that intimate moment with Mia. After unsuccessfully trying to contact Veronica for days, Alexander resolved to talk to Mia Donovan. Their affair, if one could even call it, that was the root of the disaster. On a chilly afternoon, he arranged to meet Mia at a quiet cafe away from prying eyes. The conversation was tense from the start. "Mia," he began, rubbing his temples, "whatever we had, it can't continue." She sat opposite him, her manicure tapping an idle rhythm on the wooden table. "You're ending it just like that?" she asked, arching a perfectly shaped eyebrow. Alexander sighed. "I should never have started it. Veronica's. She's everything. We're expecting a child, for God's sake. I was a fool." Mia pursed her lips, glancing around the nearly empty cafe. "We had fun," she said with a dismissive shrug. "But I won't beg you to stay. I can find another investor for my interior design expansions. Besides, we both know you wanted this too. You're not entirely blameless." Her words stung, reminding him that he had willingly embarked on this path of betrayal. "I'm fully aware," he replied, voice taut with regret, "and I'll be sure to fulfill any business commitments we made. But personally, this is over." A flash of annoyance crossed Mia's face, but she maintained her composure. "Suit yourself. As for your wife, I genuinely wish you luck winning her back. She's an impressive woman." She smirked, ironically. "You never know, maybe she'll forgive you." Alexander flinched at the sarcasm. He settled the bill and rose to leave. The crisp wind outside the cafe felt like a slap across his face, harsh, bracing him for the battle ahead. He realized that words alone might never be enough to regain Veronica's trust. He needed to prove by actions that he could be the husband she once believed in. Over the next few days, Alexander tried everything to reach Veronica. He sent her heartfelt letters, flowers, and even voice messages acknowledging he had been a liar and a fool. Each day that passed with no response deepened his desperation. Her silence was its own verdict, telling him just how badly he had wounded her. Some nights he found himself curled up in the vacant nursery, where soft yellow walls and plush toys awaited the baby. The emptiness gnawed at him. He recalled the time they'd spent picking out paint swatches and baby furniture. Veronica had glowed with excitement, imagining the life they'd share as a family. Now, he could almost taste the bitterness of losing it all. For the first time, Alexander understood that money was powerless in this realm. No amount of wealth, no extravagant gift could mend the fracture he had caused. All the while, he wondered if Veronica was contemplating the unthinkable divorce. That single word tormented him. The idea of losing his wife and child forced him to confront the man he had become. His lavish indulgences, his unstoppable ambition, were these what had driven him away from the very person he pledged to love forever? That night, he made a decision. He would take a step that might risk humiliating him publicly, but could also show Veronica how far he was willing to go to earn her forgiveness. Because he knew deep down this was not just about romance anymore. It was about family, about their unborn child, and he could not allow his mistake to define their future. Under normal circumstances, Alexander Barnes had a reputation for fiercely guarding his privacy. He despised tabloids, avoided interviews unless they benefited his business, and rarely indulged in public displays beyond what was strategically necessary. But these were no ordinary circumstances. On a brisk afternoon, Veronica was sitting in Sophia's cozy living room, half listening to the steady hum of the television. She was flipping through channels absent-mindedly, trying to distract herself from the conflict swirling in her mind, when her finger froze on the remote. The news anchor, Robert Kingsley, was talking about none other than Alexander Barnes. In a surprising turn of events, Robert Kingsley said Chicago's millionaire real estate mogul Alexander Barnes has made a public announcement regarding his personal life, referencing his estranged wife, Veronica Barnes, who is currently expecting their first child. Veronica's heart jolted. She set the remote aside as her eyes zeroed in on the screen. There was Alexander, standing at a podium in front of a cluster of microphones, the city's seal behind him. He looked tense, his usually immaculate hair slightly disheveled. Reporters clamored around, flashes from cameras illuminating the scene. "I have made grave mistakes." Alexander's voice echoed through the speakers, subdued. "I want to address these mistakes and ask my wife's forgiveness. Veronica, if you're watching this, I love you. I take full responsibility for my actions and the pain I've caused. I know words aren't enough, but please know I'm ready to do whatever it takes to make this right for you and for our child." A collective murmur rose among the press. They fired questions, but Alexander shook his head, declining to elaborate. He concluded his short statement with, "Veronica, I'm begging you for another chance. You mean everything to me." The camera panned back to the news anchor, who explained that this impromptu press conference had sent ripples through Chicago's high society. Rumors had been swirling about Alexander's infidelity, but now it was confirmed. The anchor speculated about the future of the Barnes family and their empire. Veronica's throat tightened. She turned off the TV, tears gathering in her eyes. She had never seen Alexander so vulnerable in front of the public. His sincerity tugged at her heart, and a complex swirl of emotions weighed on her chest: anger, hurt, love, and an unwilling longing to believe in him again. Sophia, who had walked in midway, rested a gentle hand on Veronica's shoulder. "He's truly sorry," she said softly. "I know it doesn't erase what he did, but this is a big deal for Alexander." Veronica nodded, swallowing her tears. She was still furious about his betrayal, but there was no denying the love she once felt for him. And the baby, her baby, deserved a chance to grow up with two parents, if that was truly possible. Later that evening, her phone buzzed. It was a text from Alexander. "I'm not sure you saw the press conference, but I meant every word. I miss you more than anything. Please meet me for dinner tomorrow. If you don't want to talk after that, I'll respect your wishes. Just give me one chance to see you." Veronica stared at the message for a long moment. She typed, deleted, retyped. Finally, she responded with a single word: "Fine." She wasn't certain what tomorrow would bring, but she needed clarity. Maybe seeing him in person, outside of the emotional chaos, would give her some semblance of direction. Whether it would lead to reconciliation or final closure, she couldn't say. But one thing was certain: she couldn't live in limbo forever. The next evening, Veronica slipped into a simple black maternity dress, her hair pulled back in a loose chignon. Sophia offered to accompany her, but Veronica insisted on going alone. She took a cab to a quaint Italian restaurant by the waterfront, a place she and Alexander had frequented in their early dating days. The soft glow of candlelight and the gentle clink of silverware set a melancholic stage for what could be the final act in their fraught marriage. Alexander was already seated at a corner table, dressed in a crisp white shirt with no tie, sleeves rolled up. He looked up anxiously as she approached, standing out of respect. His eyes, tired yet hopeful, fixated on her. She slid into the seat opposite him, her posture rigid. The waiter arrived with menus, but Alexander quickly signaled that they needed a moment alone. When the waiter retreated, the silence between them stretched taut. Veronica finally broke it. "Why this restaurant?" she asked, her voice calm. "Is this supposed to remind me of when things were better?" Alexander nodded slowly. "Yes, partly, but also because I wanted someplace familiar, where we shared genuine memories." Where it all began, Veronica studied him. Your public apology. That was unexpected. You hate media attention. He let out a shaky breath. I do. But I was desperate to show you I'm sincere. I know you may never trust me again, but I needed to make a statement I couldn't take back. The faint strains of a violin drifted from the restaurant's small stage. Veronica felt a pang of nostalgia. She remembered dancing in this very spot with Alexander 2 years earlier, newly engaged and full of dreams. Now the ghost of that memory made her chest tighten. "Tell me everything," she said, gaze unwavering. "I want the truth about you and Mia, from start to finish." Alexander rubbed his palms together, beads of sweat forming at his temple. "We met at a design expo in New York about 4 months ago. She pitched ideas for my new hotel chain. One thing led to another. Dinners turned into late nights. I was stressed, traveling often, and he faltered, his voice thick. We became close. It was an escape, Veronica, a distraction, but it was never love. I swear that. I got caught up in a moment of weakness. Then it spiraled. Her face was etched with betrayal. 4 months. While I was carrying your child." He dropped his gaze. "I know, and I will regret it for the rest of my life. I ended it." He sighed heavily. "Last week, right after you left. She means nothing to me." Veronica drew in a shaky breath, tears prickling her eyes. Anger churned within her. "You broke my trust. Do you even understand what you've done to us?" Alexander reached across the table, lightly touching her hand. She pulled away reflexively, but then let his fingers rest on hers. "I do," he whispered, "and I hate myself for it. I know I'm not worthy of your forgiveness, but I'll keep trying." She blinked back tears, her voice trembling. "What about our child? Do you realize the risk you took? Did you ever stop to think about how this stress could harm me or the baby?" He closed his eyes, tears threatening to escape. "Every night since you left, it haunts me. I want to be there for you and our child. I'm willing to do anything, even if it means stepping away from business, from expansions, anything to earn your trust back." Silence enveloped them once more. For a fleeting moment, the restaurant around them seemed to vanish, leaving them suspended in the sorrow and longing that had overtaken their relationship. Finally, Veronica nodded, swallowing hard. "I'm not promising forgiveness, but I can't ignore the fact that our child deserves both parents. I'm willing to try counseling couples therapy. If we still fail, at least I can say I tried everything before walking away." Relief flickered across Alexander's features. He nodded fervently. "Thank you," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. "You won't regret it." Veronica wasn't so sure. The heartbreak still weighed on her, and trust was a fragile thing once shattered. But she felt a small, hesitant spark hope, and for now, that was enough to hold on to, however tenuously. True to her word, Veronica scheduled a counseling session with a renowned therapist, Dr. Carla Whitmore, who specialized in marital issues and family therapy. Given their public status, discretion was crucial. Dr. Whitmore arranged for them to meet after hours at her private office in a quiet suburb to avoid unwelcome attention. Veronica arrived first, her nerves on edge. She had no idea how therapy would unfold, but she needed a structured environment to confront the emotional wreckage. She nervously glanced around the softly lit waiting room, taking in the comfortable chairs and muted earth. Tones meant to evoke calm. Alexander walked in moments later, tension radiating off him. They exchanged curt nods, nothing more, their hearts pounded with the gravity of what lay ahead. When Dr. Whitmore finally opened her door and ushered them inside, they settled on a plush sofa, maintaining a cautious distance between them. "I'm Dr. Carla Whitmore," the therapist began gently, seating herself across from them. She had a warm, reassuring smile and glasses perched on the bridge of her nose. "I understand you both are going through a tumultuous time. I want you to know this is a safe space, and everything discussed here is confidential." Veronica shifted uncomfortably. Alexander swallowed hard. They were so accustomed to appearing polished for the public eye, it was jarring to let the cracks in their lives show. But soon, Dr. Whitmore's empathetic demeanor encouraged them to open up. Veronica went first, describing her devastation upon learning of the affair, her fear for her unborn child, and her uncertainty about whether she could ever trust Alexander again. She spoke with tears and trembling hands, but her words carried a fierce resolve. Alexander then recounted his own turmoil, his growing distance from Veronica during her pregnancy, how he felt overwhelmed by business pressures, and how a momentary lapse in judgment spiraled into an affair he deeply regretted. As he spoke, he became choked with emotion, and for perhaps the first time, Veronica witnessed a raw vulnerability in him that was neither scripted nor strategic. Dr. Whitmore listened carefully, occasionally guiding them with open-ended questions. "Veronica, when Alexander says he regrets his actions, what feelings does that stir in you?" she asked softly. Veronica hesitated. "I feel uncertain. Part of me wants to believe him, but another part can't forget the image of him with her. It replays in my mind constantly. I'm afraid to let my guard down and be hurt again." Alexander's voice cracked as he responded, "I understand that, and I'm willing to accept the consequences of my actions. I'll do whatever it takes, as long as it takes, to show you I've changed." Over the course of the hour, they delved deeper into their communication issues. Dr. Whitmore gently pointed out that they had ceased communicating on an emotional level long before the affair began. Veronica admitted feeling overlooked during her pregnancy, while Alexander confessed he felt inadequate. Pressured to maintain a perfect life he was unsure how to handle. By the end of the session, it was clear that the rift between them wouldn't be fixed overnight. Yet there was a seed of hope that, with consistent effort, they might navigate a path forward. Dr. Whitmore scheduled weekly sessions. She left them with homework to set aside daily time to truly talk, without interruptions or pretenses. As they walked out into the cool night air, Alexander tentatively reached for Veronica's hand. For a moment, she allowed their fingers to interlace, seeking solace in the small gesture. She wasn't ready to claim they were healed, far from it, but for the first time since discovering the affair, she felt the faint glimmer of a future that wasn't consumed by betrayal. And in that moment, it was enough to take a small, uncertain step forward together. Weeks turned into months, and the winter chill gave way to the early signs of spring. True to their promise, Veronica and Alexander attended weekly counseling sessions with Dr. Whitmore. Slowly, they peeled back layers of resentments, fears, and misunderstandings. Each session was emotionally exhausting, yet with every tear shed, they discovered new insights into themselves and each other. Veronica began seeing small changes in Alexander's behavior. He scaled back on the incessant business trips, allowing Harris Kim to handle more tasks. He spent more evenings at home, cooking simple meals, even if his culinary skills left much to be desired, and focused on Veronica's comfort. They began sharing quiet moments in the nursery, Alexander placing a gentle hand on her belly as he whispered to the baby. It was tentative, but it was real. Meanwhile, Veronica wrestled with her own conflicts. Forgiving Alexander did not mean forgetting what he had done. It meant releasing the stranglehold of anger before it drowned her in bitterness. She kept a journal, recording her fears and hopes for the future. Some days, her heart ached with the painful memory of that hotel corridor. Other days, she allowed herself to relish Alexander's efforts without second-guessing them. Dr. Whitmore stressed that trust was rebuilt through consistent acts, and though progress felt slow, it was gradually forming a fragile foundation. By the time Veronica entered her third trimester, baby preparations took center stage. She and Alexander finally finished assembling the crib. They hung delicate, star-shaped lights around the room. At one point, while placing a stuffed giraffe on a shelf, Veronica glanced over to see Alexander awkwardly fiddling with the mobile. She couldn't help but smile. The sight of him so earnestly trying to create a safe haven for their child stirred up both tenderness and sorrow for how close they'd come to losing all this. Then came the day Veronica went into labor. It happened unexpectedly one morning, a few weeks earlier than planned. She clutched her stomach in alarm as pains rippled through her. Alexander, with a burst of protective urgency, swept her into the car. At Lakeshore Medical, Dr. Lin quickly assessed that the baby was ready to arrive, a little ahead of schedule, but looking healthy. Alexander held Veronica's hand through every contraction, whispering apologies and words of encouragement. In the throes of pain, Veronica saw flashes of their journey, the wedding vows, the heartbreak, the therapy sessions. When their baby finally emerged with a sharp, life-affirming cry, tears of relief and joy coursed down both of their faces. "It was a girl, Doctor," Lynn announced, placing the tiny, wriggling infant on Veronica's chest. In that moment, the enormity of what they had nearly lost struck Veronica hard. She clung to Alexander's hand as he looked at their daughter with awe. The weight of their past mistakes didn't vanish in an instant, but it receded, overshadowed by the profound love that bloomed in the presence of this new life. Later, as the nurse tended to Veronica, Alexander gently held their baby, gingerly supporting her fragile head. She opened her eyes momentarily, peering into her father's face. Overcome with emotion, he kissed her forehead, murmuring, "I will never let you down." Veronica, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, felt a swell of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, they were on the road to healing. The therapy, the apologies, the relentless effort, it all pointed to a future that might be free of deceit. And for that moment, in that hospital room, the ghosts of betrayal slipped away into the background. They were a family now, and with a trembling, uncertain kind of grace, they embarked on a new dawn. Their journey had been marked by heartbreak, deception, and countless tears. Yet, through unwavering determination, raw honesty, and the powerful bond of a newborn baby, Alexander and Veronica Barnes discovered a fragile, new beginning. While their future remained uncertain, they chose to face it together one day at a time. Thank you for watching and reading their dramatic story of love, betrayal, and hope. If you found yourself moved by Veronica's resilience or Alexander's heartfelt remorse, remember that every relationship faces storms. What matters is whether we can learn, grow, and find our way back to each other when it truly counts. If you enjoyed this tale of second chances and redemption, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring you more gripping, real-life drama fiction and inspiring stories. Stay tuned for the next riveting chapter in our storytelling journey.